At least 272 people have died in fighting between South Sudan's rival factions in the capital, Juba, including 33 civilians as heavy gunfire erupted again in the city and many residents sought shelter at a UN base. The fighting first broke out on Thursday between troops loyal to President Salva Kiir and soldiers who support Vice President Riek Machar. U.S. President Barack Obama was in Spain's naval station Rota on Sunday, completing his European trip after cutting it short by one day due to violence in Dallas. He had been in Madrid on Saturday evening, where he met with King Felipe VI on Sunday morning. Later, he met with Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy. The visit is Mr. Obama's first to Spain as president. Egypt's Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry on Sunday paid a rare visit to Israel, pressing for renewed peace efforts with the Palestinians and saying, before talks with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, that a two-state solution is not far-fetched. Shoukry's visit is first by an Egyptian foreign minister in 9 years. It was a sign of a closer engagement with Israel, partly driven by shared alarm and security cooperation over common regional threats that include Islamist insurgency. As British people voted to leave the EU half of a month ago, Denmark, the UK's close neighbour across the North Sea, which joined the EU with the UK in the same year of 1973, now feels like it is going to lose a long-term partner, as some Danish officials have recently voiced. The country will be facing numerous challenges on employment, immigration and terrorism if the leaving of the UK is finally realised. Many Danish people feel sorry for the British people's choice, while more others are expecting a thorough reform within the EU. Welcome back. This weekend was a big one in Warsaw, Poland, as NATO leaders agreed they would strengthen the alliance's military presence in the east with 4 battalions in Poland, Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania on a rotational basis to be in place starting next year. Here's a review of the two-day summit.
NATO leaders arrived in Warsaw, Poland, with an aim to display resolve towards a resurgent Russia, despite what many see as a weakening of the West due to Britain's vote to leave the EU. On the agenda is a formal agreement to deploy 4 battalions with 3,000 to 4,000 troops in the Baltic states and eastern Poland on a rotating basis to reassure eastern NATO members of its readiness to defend them. Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania and Poland had requested a permanent NATO presence amid fears that Russia could seek to destabilize their pro-Western governments through cyber attacks, stirring up Russian speakers, hostile broadcasting and even territorial incursions. President Vladimir Putin had made several gestures that seem aimed at diffusing tension ahead of the summit, though he intends to deploy nuclear-capable missiles in Kaliningrad, a Russian enclave between NATO nations. But as the summit got underway, NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg condemned Russia's annexation of Crimea and called on Moscow to end its political, military and financial support for separatists fighting Kiev troops in eastern Ukraine.
We do not and we will not recognize Russia's illegal and illegitimate annexation of Crimea. We call on Moscow to end its political, military and financial support for the separatists.
But French President François Hollande wants leaders to keep exploring the option of dialogue and firmness, which would allow them find solutions. German Foreign Minister Frank-Walter Steinmeier said the aim was not to start another Cold War with Russia, but rather encourage leaders to strengthen their readiness to defend. By the second day of the summit, U.S. President Barack Obama promised the United States long-term military commitment to ensuring security in Europe and in defending allies.
In this challenging moment, I want to take this opportunity to state clearly what will never change, and that is the unwavering commitment of the United States to the security and defense of Europe, to our transatlantic relationship, to our commitment to our common defense. And so we have to talk about that.
Discussions on the Brexit came up briefly, with the US president telling the leaders of Germany, Italy, France and Britain that they should preserve the stability and well-being of what he described as the European project. Later on Saturday, he said he expects Britain to go through with leaving the European Union after last month's referendum. But as a friend, ally and trading partner of Britain and of the EU, he said the US would want to see an orderly negotiating process and as close a relationship as possible in future. The leaders also discussed the alliance's involvement in Afghanistan. Before the opening of the summit, NATO Secretary General Stoltenberg urged allies to continue non-combat military presence in Afghanistan and funding for its security forces. President Barack Obama shelved his plans to cut the U.S. force by nearly half by year's end, from 9,800 to 5,500. He opted instead for a more limited withdrawal to roughly 8,400 troops, noting that Afghanistan forces still needed U.S. support in battling the Taliban insurgency after nearly 15 years of war.
This is where we end the program this week. Thanks for watching. And don't forget, you can share your thoughts with us using any of our social media platforms. I am Amarachi Ubani. I'll see you next time.